and I get the pleasure of talking about navigating activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living with people living with dementia. So, some of our learning objectives are going to be explain how dementia impacts ADLs and IADLs, look at common task, environmental, and communication barriers that can impact this area, and then apply practical strategies that preserve dignity and reduce distress for the individual living with dementia, and then understand how to shift from doing for someone to doing with someone during daily activities, but even during instrumental activities of daily living. So we'll kind of look at that shift in our thinking for them. So why do daily activities matter? Daily routines provide structure, purpose, and identity. When we think about how we put on our makeup, when we think about what clothes we choose to wear, how we like to start our morning. Are you get up and go to the bathroom and then go, get coffee? Do you like to just lay in bed and maybe read some morning devotions? What is your routine? And it really guides us through a day. So think about, I would actually just got back from vacation, and vacation is always wonderful, but your routine is a mess. I jumped out of bed and then I'd go work out, and then I'm waiting for breakfast to start. And so you just kind of feel off. So the loss of participation can often lead those individuals to be frustrated. They're not sure what they're supposed to be doing, or they feel like they missed something, but can't always place what it was. Also, anxiety. Uh, I don't know what I didn't do. I think I already had coffee. I'm not sure if I did. I had an individual once who, when I would go visit her, she had made probably 6 or 7 pots of coffee before I'd get there in the morning. So just a lot of anxiety about which things have I completed and which things maybe have I not. And then resistant to care. So I don't want people to help me, but I'm still not sure what I'm doing. So a lot of that's happening internally. It's important to prioritize engagement over perfection. We know that the evidence and learning about dementia, that we need to make sure people are engaged as much as possible without causing more distress or stress and anxiety, because it helps keep that brain active. Without activity, whether we have dementia or not, our brain isn't designed to push itself to be more active than it needs to be. So if I'm just sitting and people are doing things for me, my brain is just going to turn off things or not utilize parts of it because it's not necessary. So what are ADLs and IADLs, and what kind of falls under those? People hear these terms a lot and sometimes are like, I know what ADLs are, but often we don't use the word IADLs, or instrumental activities of daily living. And these are therapy terms, but if your loved one or you are, meeting with professionals or in long-term care, or a hospital setting, these are the verbiage they're going to use. So bathing, dressing, toileting, eating, and mobility are part of activities of daily living. And then instrumental activities of daily living include cooking and meal prep, going to the grocery store and grocery shopping, medication management, laundry and housekeeping, finances and transportation. And we'll spend a minute or two talking about how instrumental activities of daily living are the ones that we really see impacted initially, and sometimes can cause the greatest frustration because they require a little bit more of our executive functioning skills to complete. So how does dementia impact independence with daily tasks? I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I think this is one that it's the hardest area for us to really nail down. And I think especially if you're a loved one of somebody living with dementia, you've watched or you've been a part of their routine for so long that it's really hard to understand always where they're not able to complete that task. And that can lead to frustration for the care partners as well as that person living with dementia. So memory loss can lead to forgotten steps. I'm showering. I don't remember if I washed my hair yet or not. And people living with dementia might take one of two directions. They're not stressed about it. They're pretty confident they did it, or they repeat that step over and over again. So everybody has kind of a different perception or a different interaction when it comes to memory. Some people are going to just move on from that step they didn't do, and others will perseverate on that and keep doing it. The executive dysfunction or sequencing errors. This could be as simple as they start brushing their teeth and they haven't put the toothpaste on yet. They may have put coffee in and turned the coffee maker on, but there's no water in the coffee maker yet. Planning to take garbages out, but they haven't gathered all the garbages. So they're really trying to complete these tasks, but they're just not quite getting all of it completed. The visual spatial changes or misjudging objects. Not sure what objects are. This one can become a safety concern as well. So we've had people that keep their cleaning products under a sink, for example, but it might be in the bathroom sink. And at the same time, for years, we've kept the mouthwash under the bathroom sink, and they're not able to easily identify the difference between those. Same with hairspray and cleaning products or different things that we use. All of a sudden, they're spraying, a mirror cleaner on their hair. So we want to just be aware of that, and that those changes can really cause us to put ourselves at times into dangerous situations because they're not aware what they're using. Sensory changes or feeling overwhelmed. I say this all the time. I think it'll probably be put on my headstone because it's like my favorite go-to, but I appreciate utilizing different things to explain dementia and how I perceive it. So, as was just discussed in the last presentation, dementia diagnosis is not a telltale of I can't do things or I can't make decisions, but I like to use a 7-lane highway as an example. And so all of us can navigate through a lot of busyness in our day. We can think about where we're driving. We can get there. We can think about what we're cooking for dinner. What do I have to do when I get to work? Oh, that email I have to reply to. The kids need to be picked up. But when dementia sets in, it's like you remove a lane of a highway as it progresses. And so those senses that we're taking all this information in with, we're not able to take in as much. And so it might be that I'm getting up and I'm trying to make my coffee. And if my spouse isn't there and the TV's not on and phones aren't going off, I actually make the coffee just fine. But when my spouse gets up and it's the weekend and the TV's on, now I'm messing up how I'm making the coffee. I didn't turn the coffee pot on because there's too many senses that are trying to take information in, and my body is overwhelmed. And a lot of times those people don't know that that's what's happening. And we as a caregiver, care partner are like, they just did it fine for the last 2 or 3 days. So we have to realize that if we want someone to complete a task, we might have to decrease how many senses are being involved. So we need to shut that TV off. We need to maybe close the curtain outside if we want them to work on dressing, so they're not looking at all the snow and the wind and the cold, or turn that radio off. The other thing is lower processing speed. This one, as an OT, you can tell right now I'm a fast talker. But when I work with my clients, I have to count a lot. I have to make sure that I slow down. I often sit down so that it causes me as a human to just slow down because they just need a little bit more time to process it all and then let their brain give back what they're physically supposed to do. The big thing too is that with individuals with dementia, it's great if they get a speech therapy referral or get some speech for a very good reason of identifying how many words can they process. A big thing that we do is we are very polite and we want to give a lot of cues to that individual to complete that task. But what we find out is they may only remember 2 or 3 words. So I say, Joan, could you please get up and get dressed and then go to the kitchen, please? And all she's hearing is go to the kitchen, please, or the kitchen, please. And I've asked her to first get dressed. And now we're wondering, okay, I've asked them 5 times. I put their clothes here, but they're not able to take in all of those words and then process them and perform the task. So slowing down and then simplifying our language is really helpful. A core principle in identifying difficulties with daily tasks. The task is not the problem, the fit is. Okay, I will let that one sink in, and I think that's great for professionals to also take in. Sometimes we're surviving our day, and so we want the task to be how we need it to be done, so that we don't get overwhelmed or anxious. But the task that we often ask somebody to complete that is living with dementia isn't ridiculous or outlandish to ask them to maybe get something to drink. But if the juice is in the fridge behind the milk and the cup is in a cabinet that they don't know where it is, they're not going to be able to complete that task. If we put the cup and the juice on the table and ask them to pour it, now the fit is much easier for them to see that item and complete that task. So we want to look at the task demand. Are we asking them to do 7, 8, 10, 12 steps? Sometimes I sit with care partners and I say, okay, let's just write down how many steps it takes them to get from the bed to the bathroom to brush their teeth. And when we really break it down and it's taking the covers off and then sitting on the edge of the bed and then putting their slippers on, we end up with double digits of steps. So we want to break that down to asking them to do one task, which might be take the covers off. Okay, now I want the task of you sitting on the edge of the bed. And then another task of putting your slippers on. And that can help you as a care partner or somebody working with someone with dementia to feel successful as well, because you've now broken down that task into smaller, more manageable things. And you're like, wow, that's really great. They're still able to get out of bed. They're still able to put their slippers on. But if we make this a huge task, we're going to see that they're not successful in that. The communication style I just talked about. Sometimes family members or even staff, when I go into long-term care facilities, are like, but you sound kind of brass or you sound kind of, direct. When I'm asking them to toilet or go to the bathroom or shower, I am very short with my words because I want them to grasp the most important part of that sentence. So I'm not standing over them. I'm not being very demanding. I'm sitting down and just saying, stand up, please, or please stand up. You can, it's 3 words, but that's the first step, right? And then I'm guiding them with my hand often. And I know in the last presentation, there was a lot of talk about physical touch and all those things. It's important as well to help these people navigate through their day, because that is another communication style. If I can guide them with what I'm doing, showing them. Communication for someone living with dementia is great if you can demonstrate. So if you want them to dress or you want them to eat, be doing part of that task with them. They don't always have that ability to process language. A lot of people, as we age, don't hear so well. So if I can see you and see you doing that activity, I'm going to follow along. The other thing with communication is the not over exaggeration, but a good exaggeration of warm, comforting, happy, calm. I smile a ton during these activities because if they're scary, bathing is a big one we're going to touch on. If I'm scared to take a shower and that person sitting next to me is smiling and holding my hand and just really encouraging, I'm going to be less fearful or overwhelmed by that task. The environment we talked about. I'll spend some time on bathing, but is it warm? Is it comforting? A big thing for people living with dementia is they do have vision changes, and we don't talk probably about this enough, but our visual tract goes through our entire brain. It comes from the back all the way to the front, and so most diseases do impact our vision. And for people living with dementia, when we're asking them to do daily tasks like dress, bathe, eat, they can't always see as well. So we want to make sure there's a good lighting, that it's free of clutter. It's very hard when we talk about not being able to identify objects and we're sitting there and we're asking them to grab their brush from the sink, but there's a toothbrush, a brush. I had one lady, she couldn't locate anything in her bathroom. She'd open the cover and she'd just slam it shut because she had so many medications, makeup, everything in there. And so we want that environment very clean and tidy for them, and getting rid of any unnecessary things. Okay. And then timing and energy. Are we asking that person to do a very cognitively challenging task too early in the morning or too late at night? Sometimes people will say, my loved one always loved to shower right before bed. That's great, but perhaps we need to shower a little bit earlier before bed because they're starting to lose patience and that energy to complete that task. And when these things don't match the person's abilities, then distress increases. So we start seeing people pushing away or not wanting to complete that task, maybe falling asleep when you're asking them to engage in activities. So sign a task is too hard. We get refusals or agitations. Um, Too hard or too scary, I should say. Repeating the same step. So they're going to keep starting over, and you're like, okay, next piece of this puzzle, or take another bite. Stopping mid task. A lot of times I see people who will close their eyes and hang their heads down, and people think that they're sleeping. Oftentimes they're not, they're overwhelmed. They will perk back up if we can tone down the environment a little bit. But again, those senses are just getting overwhelmed. So if there's lots of noise in a public dining room, there's lots of talking and commotion, you'll see them just shut down. And really, we maybe need to wait a little bit longer. Also, like tasks like eating, those things, they are a little exhausting. And so we want to look at, how much are we asking them to do? If it's 10 minutes instead of 30 minutes of that whole meal, can we break that down for them? But increased dependence because they're overwhelmed, because the task is too hard. All of a sudden, somebody's putting all their clothes on for them. That's a huge one for me. I'll come in and I'll say, oh, well, they just put their shoes on and they got dressed and they put their sweater on. And a significant other will be like, they never do that for me. Or a CNA will say that, no, they're totally dependent. It's because we're throwing all the clothes out and we're running out the door and they're like, what is happening? And we're rushing around. But if we sit down, hand them one piece of clothing at a time, wow, they got dressed. Especially us. I don't think we take into consideration that when we're rushing around, that person is obsessed with what we're doing. So if you're like, well, they can get dressed and I'm going to keep multitasking, we've taken their attention away from the task at hand because you're much more interesting than a pile of clothes on the bed. Emotional outbursts. These can be yelling, they can be actually emotionals like shaking a fist or turning away, crying. Yelling out is a huge sign of just something being too overwhelming or being lonely. But we want to reframe. So these are communication signals, not behavior problems. That is probably the hardest thing for me is reading. I get contact a lot to help navigate communication between maybe loved ones in a facility and or loved ones and how to help navigate care for their family member living with dementia. And maybe loved ones aren't all on the same page, but we start seeing things as negative, and we have to remember too that we communicated our whole life different ways. When we're younger, we don't always have the words for what's going on with us, but those closest to us we're able to figure out like, oh, Megan just needs to eat, or Megan needs to just have some quiet time. And that's something we want to start navigating with our loved ones living with dementia. As some of that verbal communication goes away where they can't tell us with words what's going on, we need to start being detectives into, oh gosh, I noticed that when dad has to go to the bathroom, he just pushes everything away and he kind of cringes. Now I know he has to go to the bathroom. He's not refusing to eat. Or they put their head down or they swat at me when I'm moving too fast. I now know that if they had the verbal communication, they may say, hey, could you slow down a little bit? I'm not understanding what you're saying. So we really want to take into consideration that we are still able bodied completely, and we need to look at how we're engaging in their environment and that task we're asking them to do. I like to put bathing and personal care challenges on. There's a whole slew of ADLs and IADLs. This is one of the first ones that will come as a challenge for people, especially bathing. So why all of a sudden after someone who, for example, my dad showers every day, and if he cannot get a shower and he'll wash his head, like water is very important to him. But if he all of a sudden wasn't wanting to do that, and I'm like, gosh, but he just loves to bathe or loves to shower, what is going on? When we think about water and we think about our relationship with water, All of us have a different relationship. Some of us started swimming lessons really young. Some of us took baths and then we took showers, and some of us never went to showers. Some of us were chucked off a dock into a lake and told to like figure it out, right? Some people had near drowning experiences or have never liked water. So when it comes to bathing, we'll see people get into especially showers and they just like freak out. They do not want to be in there. Well, when we sit back and think about it, there's water literally coming in our face. And so if we have a relationship to water at all of drowning or fear of it, I'm not going to want to be in that shower. Okay. Another thing is feeling rushed, like we got to get in, we got to get out. And so there's lots of things happening. You have to undress, so you're not clothed, and now you're rushing me in, and I can't process this. And then there's this giant flood of a hose in my face coming at me, and I just don't really like a hose. And so now I feel like I'm just being shoved through something. Um, it is a lot. And so, but the thing is one of the first places too that I see conflict arise between facilities, or even when you pay someone to come in and help take care of your loved one, is that they'll say, okay, I haven't been able to bathe dad for 3 months, but Joan, I'm going to pay her and she's going to be able to get dad to bathe. And then we find out Joan isn't getting him to bathe either. And so now I'm frustrated with Joan because I hired her to get him clean and get him in that shower. What you really want to look at is, again, is that task too challenging, and is it scary, and what's going on? A big one I'll tell you right off the bat is turn a shower seat away from the shower head. So I just helped not that long ago, helped install a shower for a family with their dad was living with dementia. And if he could go into that shower and face the back wall where there was a washcloth and all these things and the water hit him in the back, he was totally fine. But if he had to get that water in his face, he didn't want to stay in there. We also cranked the heat up in the bathroom and made it very comfortable and warm, and played music. And I like wasted a lot of water because we had to get it steamy in there. And then the privacy. I know people worry about someone falling or somebody getting hurt in the shower, but if you take some time, slow down, this picture is great. There's grab bars everywhere. Oftentimes we can still have that person standing in the shower without us like directly in their business, and then just helping them guide through those steps. The other thing with showering and cleanliness is that showering's a lot of steps. You got to pump the soap, you got to get the washcloth, you got to suds up. And so helping people by handing each item to them is great, instead of having it all sitting in there. The other thing I encourage people to do, if someone is kind of dealing with some incontinence or some that you want to keep them hygienic so that we don't end up with infections, is making sure like I hand them a washcloth and then just, hey, hand me that washcloth when you're done, and take it back and then hand them another one for face, head, those kinds of things. But bathing is very tough. Toileting is another one that I will touch on. I don't think I have it here. No, I just have the bathing support. So toileting, some of the biggest difficulties with that is actually seeing the toilet and understanding where it's at. So environmentally, guiding somebody towards the toilet, with signs in the hallway, always have that bathroom lit up at night. But the second one is that individuals living with dementia, if they're having short-term memory loss, we also lose that ability to remember what the feeling of having to toilet feels like. And so a lot of people will say, gosh, I just asked them if they had to go to the bathroom and they said no, and now we've had an incontinent episode. We have to just guide them to that toilet, because just as they don't remember your name maybe or what you talked about 5 minutes ago, there's a real feeling that we learn of what having to go to the bathroom feels like. And as that feeling passes, it passes for all of us. We have a couple levels of feelings. We feel it and we're like, I can make it another hour. And then we have the urgent feeling. And oftentimes they don't recall having that middle phase until it's at the urgent and then an accident is happening. So how do we help with this? I kind of talked about the bathing side, provide one step at a time. One thing I find is calling it a spa day, calling it all sorts of things. But the biggest thing that I find to help with bathing is something really fun that they like to do after. One client for me was having coffee. She just like loved to have coffee. And so I'm like, well, if you just hop in the shower quick, I'll get the coffee going. Another individual loved to go on car rides and go to different, like go to Bismarck and shop or go with family somewhere. So we let her pick what day she would shower on. And then we'd also write on the calendar what that activity was that she was going to get to do after that. Maintain warmth and privacy and demonstrate rather than explain. I really like the demonstration piece for wiping, for washing the face, for washing the peri-era, those things. And then redefine success. So comfort over completion. If you can get them through that comfortable part, you'll start to see that they trust you if you're the one that's helping them with this task, and they're going to trust you to do more and more with that just because they get a good feeling from it. And that's probably the biggest thing I want to encourage people is even though someone may not remember my name or remember where I come from, the deepest part of our brain is our emotions. And if someone makes me feel good, I'm going to remember that even if I just met them yesterday. If I had a good experience with them and you come back in, I'm going to be like, gosh, okay, they're smiling again. I like to smile and I already feel good. So we want to make each one of these experiences positive, even if the outcome is that we didn't fully get bathed, we didn't fully complete our task. Okay. So lose that part of completion and just again, we're going to work with them through these. Dressing challenges. All of us have too many clothes. Um, we need to clean our closets out, all of us. Okay. Um, Too many clothes. Also, when there's too many clothes, we lose if clothes are soiled or not. So a big thing I see is a lot of people chuck clothes all over their room. And if your loved one is living alone or um, with their spouse or significant other, but they've always kind of just chucked like, oh, this is I wore it one day clothing, and then then I throw my underwear in the laundry basket. There's just too much clutter again. So we want to reduce the amount of options. Difficulty with fasteners, and then confusion with sequencing. Showing someone how to dress is hugely helpful. So starting with one piece of clothing and demonstrating how to do it is going to get them to still be able to dress without you chucking all their clothes on for them. The other thing is if somebody likes to wear the same outfit, just buy multiple outfits. Okay, there is no fashion police out there saying today Megan has to wear a dress and tomorrow she needs to wear slacks and then she needs to wear pink. If I have a favorite pink sweatsuit, buy 5 pink sweatsuits. It's okay. The point is that they're dressed, they're comfortable, and then go spend time doing something with them that they enjoy. The other thing is fatigue and frustration. Um, a big thing is that, if you sit down with them and they're fatiguing sitting on the edge of the bed, maybe they need a chair with arms to sit in. Maybe it is that as the disease progresses, we do wear maybe less layers. So maybe with women, it's maybe not putting a bra on if we're at home, or it is wearing like a comfortable dress or pajamas at home because it's comfortable. And I really want people to, again, understand that we want them dressed to be comfortable. We're not dressing them for some fashion statement or some sort of, I don't want my family to think I'm not taking care of mom because she's still in her pajamas, Christmas pajamas today, instead of, in a nice outfit. If that's what she's comfortable in and it's clean and they're comfortable and they're warm, then let's move on to what do we want to do with that person, the time we want to spend with them. Okay. The other thing is lots and lots of layers with heat and cold and all those things. People's temperature does change. And so some people are wearing like 5 layers of clothing. One of my relatives, her mom has Alzheimer's and she would come out fishing in the middle of July in like 3 sweaters and never sweat. Just make sure that we keeping her hydrated. But if you try to take away a layer, it wasn't going to go well. So lay out clothes in the order of use or just give them one piece of clothing at a time. One thing I tell, especially partners of people living with dementia, grab a chair, grab the newspaper or a cup of coffee and sit down and chill. Like, you don't need to rush. We don't have anywhere to be. If we have somewhere to be, that's a different story, but every day we don't have somewhere to be. So sit down and just make it a relaxed thing versus like an exhausting, everyone's sweating trying to get through this super fast. Okay. Limit choices to reduce being overwhelmed. Clean the closets out. I love going to people's houses and they're like, the slide open closet is like so packed, you can't fit another thing in there. And I'm like, how many clothes? And they just keep picking out the same sweatshirt and sweatpants outfit. And I'm like, I know it feels good and we've collected our clothes over many years, but we can get rid of them. Use adaptive or easily fitting clothing, allow extra time and praise effort, not outcome. Eating in mealtime. This is another area where I just like to tell people that the purpose of eating is to get some nutrition. And so we really want to help people enjoy eating. So difficulty using utensils. That person sitting there is a very real representation of someone living with dementia who's feeling just kind of overwhelmed. You look down, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 types of food on the plate, and there's several pieces of utensils. And those people will just kind of look off or pay attention to who's around them. Very distracted by what's around them and what's on the table, even. So in the background, you see there's a plant on the table. All those things are going to impact that person being able to eat. Changes in appetite or taste. We naturally lose sensitivity with taste, and so we start to crave the old salt and sweet stuff. But we really do see this happen for people living with dementia. They just really like leave those Snicker bars next to their favorite recliner and like they're going to pick out the Halloween candy all day. Enjoy a soda or chips. And then fatigue during meal times can make it difficult. And then trouble recognizing food. So again, on that plate, you see, I think potatoes and like turkey or something. It almost blends in with the color of that plate. So the biggest things for mealtime support, we want to reduce distractions. So again, not a ton of people. We don't need like flowers on the table. We don't need fancy tablecloths. We want to use high contrast plates. Lots of people like white plates, but when we put lighter colored food on them, it is hard for that person to see that. And finger food is great. So if we can cut up chicken strips or it shows pizza because it's all of our favorites, probably not the most nutritional, but carrot sticks, grapes, all those kinds of things are great because the point is we want them to get some nutritional intake. Provide smaller, more frequent meals. Even at mealtime, if I'm in long-term care, I tell them to put every side on a different plate and only present them with one plate at a time. So if it's the vegetables, just give them the vegetables and let them eat with their hands or use a fork or whatever. And once they've kind of gotten away from eating that, then give them the potatoes, but just offer one plate at a time and only one drink at a time. So not coffee, juice, and water all at the table because it's overwhelming. And then eating together when possible. So like you are also showing them that you're eating. That is a social cue for any of us. Oh, we're eating right now. And we start joining in. So that's a great thing too if you can eat with that person. Why do IADLs decline first? So IADLs are those instrumental ADLs, so medication management, grocery shopping, driving. A big part of it is it utilizes our frontal lobe and our executive functioning skills, which is our planning and organizing. So how am I going to go to the grocery store? What am I going to buy? What are we making later? Judgment and problem solving. How am I going to get there? It's freezing outside. Am I going to take my car? Where am I going to park? Safety awareness, and then the multi-step sequencing. So these are the skills that are affected early in dementia. And these are sometimes the ones that you'll see in your loved one when you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, like dad isn't paying his bills. Or there's mail all over the countertop. What is going on? Well, when you get a pile of 7 letters, how do I plan what I'm going to open? How do I problem solve what to do with them once I open them? If they're a bill, junk mail, and then what's the next step with it? Where do I put it? Okay, so a lot of these, you'll see people not taking their medications. Their pills are still full, or if they are using a medication planner, it's still full. They haven't taken any of those meds. Driving, they're getting lost. Okay, whoopsies. So common IADL safety concerns, missed or double medication doses, unsafe stove or appliance use, financial vulnerability, and driving risks. I had a very lovely couple that wrote checks every single day for like a month. Um, to the exact same places because they didn't throw away the mail. They lost $30,000 in that month, giving $10 here, $20 there, and they were so cute. They both had dementia. They'd sit down. She'd say, "Okay, write a check to the fraternal police or the angel, whatever," and they'd write a $15 check. But they didn't realize they had just done that over and over again. So, how do we support this without taking over? Independence to interdependence. So, driving is a huge one people want to hear about all the time. It's more talking about driving. Hey, if you're going to go to this event, can we maybe talk about you just driving down to the senior center to get your meal? But maybe you could ride with Betty next door to church and just starting that process versus we're coming in, it's emergent, and we're taking the keys. Helping people to have a role in giving up things or changing how they do things. When it comes to cooking, absolutely have somebody help meal prep. But if they're not safe with the stove, if we meal prep with them while I'm there, can they heat up their food in the microwave and I can unplug the stove for the week? We're still able to navigate some of those things. We want to preserve their roles and identity. If they did things, I had one lady, she could still make bread. She didn't know where she was living, didn't really know her family, but she had made bread for so long that it was so innate in her. She could make like 15 loaves of bread in a day, and she would, but her family just needed to be present and help her with that. Using visual cues and routines. Dementia clocks are godsend. A lot of people will get calendars or things for their loved ones, but if I look at a calendar and I don't know where to start because I don't know what day it is, that calendar isn't helping me. So a lot of people do a great job of saying, "Okay, I'll get them a calendar or a planner." But we need something to help tell us what today's date is, what the year is. And so a dementia clock is a great option to start using to help with visual cues and routines. Okay. When someone says, "But I have a medication planner," so they should know to take it because it's Tuesday. But where in the world are we telling them that it's Tuesday or that today is Thursday? We have to have something that says that to them. And a calendar doesn't do that for us unless someone else is crossing the days off for us. We have no idea how to orient to what day it is. And then supervise discreetly. That's a tough one too for some of us, especially if we've worked alongside a loved one for a long time. How do we not step in and take over? Allowing them and really sitting down and picking out tasks that we can do together, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. The towels don't have to be folded perfectly. The clothes don't have to be put away perfectly. Focus on success and not speed. Effective communication, we've talked about this. I can't express that enough. Calm tone of voice, short, simple phrases, and then one instruction at a time. That if I can give anybody anything, two choices always with things. If you're feeling like they're not initiating, two choices. Okay. Do you want this or this for supper? You're still giving them options, but you're not saying, "What do you want to eat for dinner tonight?" Okay, that's way too broad. And then avoid correcting or quizzing. Don't you remember when I said that? Don't you remember I just told you that? No, no, no. This is what we're doing, or this is what I said. So avoiding those kinds of things are going to alleviate some of that stress. And then what increases resistance? Arguing facts. You guys, truthfully, unless somebody is at extreme risk of being hurt or injured, it doesn't matter if we went to the doctor yesterday or last week. It does not matter. Okay. It doesn't matter if you talked to your son this morning or you talked to him a month ago. It's that they're talking about that they had these interactions. Rushing tasks will get resistance, over explaining things, and then saying you already did that. If somebody made coffee several times, remove the coffee pot and say, "Hey, help me clean up the coffee pot," versus, "Wow, you made 7 pots of coffee already. We don't need to make another pot of coffee." And then taking over too quickly can add a lot of stress. So preserving dignity reduces that distress level. Instead of they can't do it anymore, what can they still do? You can't cook anymore. We want to say, how can this task be adapted? Or what parts of meal prep can they still help with? I love that picture. People can stir. People love being the ones to slap the cookies on the pan because they get to eat the dough. Let me do that for you. No, how can I support them to do this themselves? And then they're being difficult. Instead, we want to ask, what is that environment or task telling us about that?